Welcome to the first Restart Sailing webinar. My name's Simon Lovesey, and I'm joined by John Emmett.
Hi.
Just a bit of let me bring in the background there. So, a bit of background. I founded the Restart Sailing group just after the REA dinghy show. When we were starting cancelling a lot of events and became quite a sad affair of cancelling it. Clearly we needed to work together, so something like 100 clubs and classes have come together to work together to really to see if we can restart sailing. I'm joined with John Emmett as well. Actually, give me your quick background, John.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just approaching this very much as a club sailor. I think we have a fantastic opportunity to bring sailing back in a fun way, which is focusing on the club. So first things first, sailing locally, sailing for fun. We've got the social distancing in place, and one of the things I really like is going to encourage family sailing. And I just think as a sport we need to be really careful, really sensible in terms of safety, both on the water and on shore, to make sure we don't take one step forward and then two steps back. So my bread and butter is Olympic coaching, but my personal sailing, I'm very much a club sailor at heart.
Okay, so we've sort of created three parts of this. This is the first of the webinars, where we're really in this first stage of the really what we call the aggressive self-distancing. Now we've got ready and clubs are starting to go back. We're starting to see some sort of casual sailing coming on. In most areas, I just seen a message from Rutland, open for 2nd of June for sailing, so big funds there. So hopefully that means Angle and Water are back on the water and they're ready to go. But really it's the second phase of this going to be the harder bit, where we look at national championships and things like that, when we have to start travelling. We'll come on to that in a minute. And the final phase is really when we get back to the sort of international side. There's a long way around that, but never mind. Of actually travelling abroad, and both John and I spend a lot of time travelling, and I think that could be some way away, but I think we all need to work for that and aspire to it.
I mean, absolutely. I think the more travel and the larger numbers you have, just the harder everything becomes. And certainly from my remit, I'm always, very conscious of safety. I'd always cycle with a cycle helmet, and I wouldn't drive anywhere unless my vision was good. So I think this idea of first things first, it's really important, and the clubs are the backbone of our sport. Yeah, I mean, I think family sailing is absolutely perfect for single-handed sailors. You probably need some sort of buddy system in place. So not sailing actively with somebody, but sailing at the same time as them. And in a perfect situation, we're very lucky now with modern safety devices. We can have a phone with us, a radio with us, tell somebody on shore. And for all those club sailors who've sailed for 20 years, I think on the water is very, very safe, and they're probably frustrated they haven't been able to go sailing sooner. So it's probably now a great time for people with slower single-handers like lasers and solos and so forth.
So I think really probably in the next 2 or 3 weeks we'll see most clubs back. It's good news to hear that Angle and Water are going, because that represented quite a large block of clubs. I think the Scots have gone back, the Northern Ireland. I don't know if anyone's from Wales. I think we're possibly still waiting for them to go. I was speaking to some of the Welsh Water people yesterday. I think they're still not quite there, but hopefully in the next week or so. So John, I think one of your sort of specialities is self-coaching, and this must be the time for self-coaching, mustn't it?
Yes, yeah, because to be a coach, you need to get close to your sailor a lot of the time, and that's not practical at the moment. So that was my first book, be your own sailing coach. But the second book I wrote was called Coach Yourself to Win. That sounds quite a provocative racing title. I think probably I should have just called it. That's what we're trying to do now. When you go sailing, go out, have some fun, but also try and improve, because even if you're only going, and maybe I shouldn't use the word only, but if you're only going cruising and pottering around, if you sail better, it's actually more comfortable and much more enjoyable experience. And this is the backbone. We can go sailing for fun now, socially distanced, but still improve our sailing, and having those goals in mind, what we do when we hit the water. I think that's really important. That the safety has to be first. I do worry that if we have a wonderful forecast, everybody could turn up at the sailing club at the same time. I think we're in real danger of having a second wave of COVID in June, just as everybody gets together again as things are eased. So we want to do our best to make sure that is a ripple rather than a tsunami. And I was really pleased to hear that the government's starting a trace and track program. So we saw that in countries like South Korea was very effective. So I think we need to really enjoy our sailing, but to do it in the safest possible way. Because
so I put a slide up, John, about the windsurfing, some advice
the self-rescue.
And I think probably not many ribs going out at the moment, seems to be the feedback. So really it's buddy sailing and things like that. So I don't know if you've got any sort of words of suggestion about sort of self-rescue and making sure you're fit, your boat's fit to ready, and got some equipment.
Well, I think I talked just briefly, just to say, we're very lucky now that you can get very small radios that you can strap to your mast. You can get, most phones are IP68 rated, so you can probably just put them in your buoyancy aid or put them in a plastic baggie, and you've got good communication there. But just sailing sort of near people and be aware who goes out and who doesn't. I think prevention is probably better than cure, just to be really aware of the weather forecast and what's happening with the currents, etc. I think at the moment it's the holidays, as it were, and the weather's turned it on beautifully down here in Weymouth. So we've got sea breezes, so it means you could launch in very light winds and then possibly get much stronger winds later. So you do need to be aware of that. And I think hopefully everyone's spent the time doing the boat work, but before they get on the water. And for me, the foundations of a strong house is that bottom base, and that's all about club sailing. And if we had fantastic club sailing, then probably people would travel a bit less. So I think it's good to put that back into the clubs. And in terms of the safety boats, we're not going to see the normal number of ribs on the water, I think, for a very long time.
So looking really towards the future and the next stage, there's been a lot of discussion about national championships. We've had a bit of a poll on the Restart Sailing website. It looks like around about 65% of the nationals are being cancelled. Predominantly, I think, to do with logistics and getting all the resources, committee votes and volunteers in place.
Probably the safety sort of on the water, so to speak, from COVID is fine, but it's hard to manage the on the water safety, if that makes sense. And we've got to try and respect our lovely volunteers who really make these events possible. And they're possibly the volunteers in a more vulnerable category than the sailors themselves. So we mustn't take it too lightly. I think
this has gone beyond a complete sort of COVID situation and self-distance. There's actually some of the logistics involved, isn't it? And as you say...
Yeah, well, I think some of the clubs have made the decisions to stop all large events, or maybe it's their local authorities have made those decisions for them. And I think for me, it's really better safe than sorry, because we want to avoid any bad publicity for the sport, not to even think about the tragic loss of life if something happened as a result of attending a large event.
So
and I think we can
There was one suggestion actually on the website. Perhaps all the classes should just agree to cancel these
Alice
championships.
Driscoll. Yeah, I think Alice Driscoll made an excellent point, because otherwise the danger, if nearly everybody cancels, those classes who do try and force through an event, they have no idea of numbers, where they may suddenly get a huge number of entries from other classes, from people who are desperate to do a nationals. So I think a combined approach here is really important, and I think it's one of the things which Restart Sailing has done very well, to bring all the classes together and start the discussion.
Yeah. So just sort of moving on, we just sort of play this little video. So what's happened here, John, then? What's the story behind this one?
Yeah, well, Solos is a fantastic class. I think we've been speaking to Doug, and they're quite progressive, and they were relatively early to cancel the nationals. I think they realised it was impractical, but that doesn't mean we can't do something this summer. We've had it before, when there was sailing was in the distant future. People were doing e-sailing and chatting together over Zoom, so we kept together. People from the clubs and classes still socialised and still raced, albeit in front of a computer. A step further than that now.
Yeah, so you mentioned sort of apps and things like that. We're starting to see them emerging into the sort of emphasis of it.
Lockdown happened now rather than 20 years ago, we'd all be playing with our Nokia, whatever it was.
Yeah, so I think this
technology.
is the sort of the era of the technology, isn't it? So we are pleased to announce, we were hoping that Doug Latter, the chairman of the solo class, were going to join us, but I just had a message that he's still busy at work, but we'll catch up.
Joys of Zoom as well.
But we've been working, so they cancelled the 2020 National Champions, which was going to be at East Lothian in lovely Scotland, so that won't be happening.
It's always sad, but it's a good decision, and I think the classes which made their decision early, their members will be very happy for them, because that way they know what's going on. If you look internationally, New Zealand, publicity for that country's been very positive, and I think the solos have really grasped the horn.
Right, so we have a new event, the 2020 Solo National Club Regatta. So this is really pushing the boundaries here. Basically, it will happen at nationwide locations, so you'll elect to sail at your own club, and I think that will be a good thing, bringing in all the local sort of elements. And clubs will sort of sign up to run their own events, a bit like Bart's Bash, so they'll be sort of part of that.
And really maximum social distancing. If you look at the furthest 2 point for solo sailors, that's got to be hundreds of miles. So if everybody spread out, it does make it a lot easier, because there's certain points, like when you launch, or probably more likely when you recover, it is harder to keep that separation.
Yeah, that's right. So it'll be clusters of, say, 10, 15 solos sailing at their own club. The class have been very excited about this. They're actually talking about getting 300 plus solos out, which will be fantastic.
Well, potentially you'll get a far bigger entry than you would at the Nationals, because I think logistics, and that will make it harder for people to do one big event. Whereas here, hopefully, by this date, all the clubs will be back open.
That's right, and I think, as you said before, it encouraged some sort of local activity and so forth. So 19th of July, put that one in the diary. We booked John to do some online commentary and coaching. You may be out.
So we have normal media.
Media.
Possibly more media than usual.
More media. So this will be brought together with Facebook Live. So we'll basically be able to take the tracking feeds off all the separate club events, bring them together, have an ongoing leaderboard, things like top speed, leg times. Each club will set its own course, and they'll have an app to go out there and ping that, so there'll be flexibility in them being able to set their own sort of, so if they've only got a small lake, they'll have a smaller cake, coastal clubs will have a bigger one, and then John will bring it all together in the sort of Facebook sort of live sort of session. Making use of
it brings all the solos together, as it were, in one point of time, even if they're not actually physically together.
Yeah, that's right. And we'll be making use of technology. So you're like the Selden Selgers Winter Series, you'll enter online, you'll elect to which club that you're going. If your club's not there, you'll still be able to go out and compete. So we'll be looking for clubs to sort of sign up in the next few weeks to say they want to organise a race, and we'll be working with them. We've got James Ripley, who's one of the RWA National Race Officers, who will be acting as our event PRO. Doug Latter, the class chairman, will be the event director. We even have things like an online protest committee emerging, so you'll submit your online protest via Zoom, so no physical contact here. Again,
I've got something from Doug, because unfortunately, bless him, he's not going to make it home, but he just wanted to say that he's super excited that the sailer class are able to demonstrate their commitment to grassroots sailing, and they're doing everything in their power to support the club sailors. And they're looking forward to being part of the ongoing team, and I think they're going to lead the way for other classes.
Well, that's right, and we already have interest. The K1s, for example, are looking to do their little event in September, and the D0s. So if other classes are interesting, there's scope to do it, and I think the feeling is this actually could become a regular feature, even when the real national championships come back.
I think there's definitely something about using apps so that you can do more sailing from home, and I think that's one of the things which is always difficult, to get enough volunteers in one particular place. And I never realised until recently just how much driving around I do to go to events almost every weekend in the UK. And then goodness knows how many air miles with the international circuit. It's actually been quite nice to spend a bit of time at home. And I think one of the really nice things which has come out of this is families sailing together. Because sailing, it really is, it's a sport for all the family.
Yeah, so I think this could become a nice little feature. I'm not sure these bits are going to come through. So there'll also be an online prize giving. I think we've got some sponsorship from North Sail and Magic Marine, so I expect some good prizes there. And they will be awarded virtually online, but I presume that they will be sent their goodies and their vouchers, but we'll do some interviews online. And we're also planning to hook up with the sailors during the race sessions, again by their mobile phones. So chance for them to give us almost their briefing of the events, show us what's happening in their neck of woods. And then John will be looking to interview them afterwards. We'll have all their data, so we'll know how fast they did, and a sort of provisional ranking. We'll try and join it together. So we'll be looking to hook them up remotely, bring them in, and share all the action. And finally, we're going to have a good drink in the virtual clubhouse. So we will all meet together in Zoom and share a drink or so after the event, and again chance to do the barroom talk and so forth. So I think
going off topic, I think the socialising by Zoom has been great. I've been drinking with my university friends from Loughborough pretty much every Friday night, sometimes to 2 o'clock in the morning, and it's brought me back to being 20 again, and it's been fantastic because of the geography. It's been really hard to see people in real life, and I think for people's mental health, the socialising is a very important part, and that's definitely true for sailing. Like the social part of the sailing is such a big thing.
Yes, and really thank heavens for Zoom and Skype and Microsoft Teams. It would be a very lonely world out there, wouldn't it? And I think we need to get back to that as soon as possible. So I think a few comments have come through on the Facebook, mainly I think from our Scottish friends. Actually, we've got something from Luke in Pembrokeshire. So can you see that, John?
I'm struggling with 3 devices at the moment, so maybe if you read out and I'll try and answer any questions.
Well, actually, the Pembrokeshire clubs have been closed by the Port Authority, which is a bit of a theme that we've seen. So even though, for example, England's been open, we've seen Anglian Water and other local water bodies actually been late to open up. I mean, I think for understandable reasons, but we're getting a bit.
I mean, it must be very frustrating for those sailors when their closest piece of water becomes inaccessible because it's closed down, and then you see other people sailing around the country. And for the really competent club sailors, it must have been a frustrating time. The people I have a lot of concern for is the beginners of the sport. So the child who's going to go for their first ever optimist sail over the Easter holidays, people who've never been in a boat, or perhaps, they haven't, they're still in their learning to sail phase. So I hope these people will have the opportunity to sail with somebody in their household and learn that way. So yeah. I think there are new opportunities. I'm a bit worried a lot of people seem to have taken up cycling or something like that as their second sport, and we mustn't let that become their first sport.
Well, definitely. But interestingly, living near the River Hamble, the amount of people hitting the water over the weekend was unprecedented. So I think people are using this opportunity to try something new or get back on the water. And I think sailing needs to work hard to make sure we are restarting and actually resetting as well, and bringing those people who perhaps lapsed over the years and giving them a passion to get back on the water.
Yeah, we don't want boats in the boat park where the covers are going green. Get them all active.
Okay, so I think we're coming up to about 25 minutes, so we'll probably call it a day. Just to say that we have the second instalment of these webinars next week, same time, Wednesday at 7 o'clock, where we'll be looking more at the traditional bigger events and seeing how they're progressing and seeing how we can perhaps help them along their way.
And I think the group has been a fantastic thing. It's been one of the most active Facebook groups I've been involved with. So really good to see, questions and comments and things there, because it's just good to talk.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, well, over and out, and thank you very much.